And a very good evening to you. This is Newsline Prime. We're live, as always, from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And this evening, it's turned out to be rather a nice evening tonight. And to make your evening even nicer, we've got with us Mr. Rusiripala Tenakorn in the studio, and we hope to be informed a little bit more about the attempt to amend the People's Bank Act. And we'll be asking Mr. Rusiripala Tenakorn, who is himself a retired former senior banker, what it is about the proposed amendments to the People's Bank Act that is causing so much of concern. Yes, so let's not waste any more time. Mr. Rusiripala Tenakorn, very good evening to you.
Good evening, Faras.
Now, a couple of days ago, we had Mr. Dinesh Gunawardena, whose late father, Philip Gunawardena, is credited with having actually proposed this whole business of the People's Bank, and it was Mr. Lanka who then actually presented the paper to Cabinet and gave life to what we now know as the People's Bank.
Yeah.
Now, why, Mr. Rusiripala, you've been the president of the State Bank Employees Union and so on. Why and what it is that has aroused your concern?
Yes, I think you mentioned Dinesh. I must mention a word about him, because it was his father who is considered as a founder of the People's Bank. Although it was the bill was presented by Mr. Lanka lately, his idea was, the concept was proposed by late Mr. Philip Gunawardena, and then it was to be a bank for the agricultural sector, for the local industrialists, as well as the cooperative movement.
The cooperative movement?
Yes,
right.
mainly, basically. So that was the concept behind the formation of the People's Bank at that time. So Dinesh today, as a sitting MP, has a very vital role to play to take any necessary safeguards and steps that may be necessary to the continuation of the bank as it was founded. So that is the reason why we are very much associated with Honorable Dinesh Gunawardena in this matter, in creating a public awareness and also going deep into the conceptual idea behind the amendments that are proposed for the amending the Act of the People's Bank. You know, this Act is a very old Act, 1961.
So it's a bit outdated?
It is in a matter of a few things, but which have been adjusted subsequently. The objectives have been amended in the 1980s.
Right.
The objectives which are confined to the cooperative movement and to the agricultural sector, and also financing the rural sector, was widened a bit with the amendments that were brought in 1989, 88. And there are a few other short amendments which did not bring about any material changes in the Act. But the major, the present proposal that is being made by the Minister of Finance for the amendment of the Act brings in some very serious issues. When you look deep into into it, as to why it has become necessary and why it takes this form, and more than anything else for us, when an act is to be amended, when people seek clarifications on various grounds, the explanations that are forthcoming from the government side, adds to the confusion that is already there. This is one reason why we are more concerned about the actual idea behind the proposed amendment.
So are you saying, in simple speak, are you saying that when questions are being asked,
yes,
that the bank are being rather coy? Is that what you mean?
Not only the bank, even those who answer the questions in Parliament are,
the ministers.
Either the ministers, in the discussion, in the course of the discussion, we can refer to those in the proper context.
Yeah.
But I think, the way that they are trying to sort of convince the people who seek clarifications,
Yeah.
I mean, brings about more conjectures and doubts about this whole affair.
Now, I want to ask you this question, lest we be accused of making this program boring. So, I'd like to ask you, from what I have read, they are proposing to amend the People's Bank Act.
Yes.
And one of the principal features of this is, of course, that they want to increase the bank's capital.
Yes.
And bring it more up to date with what they're doing now.
Yes.
Which in itself isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Right. Now then, the bone of contention that I have sort of picked up is that the People's Bank are proposing to amend this act in such a way that when they issue debentures, as they can issue debentures even now, I take it, but at the moment they've got various safeguards. You need the permission of the Monetary Board of Sri Lanka first, then you need the concurrence, the agreement of the Minister of Finance, and then the bank can go ahead. However, there's a critical part here. In that process, currently these debentures are guaranteed by the state through the Treasury.
Yes.
So far so good? Right. But the amendment to the Act seeks the removal of the permission of the Monetary Board of Sri Lanka.
Yes.
And there will not be any Treasury guarantee.
Yes. Whereas this question of the capital adequacy arises in a different context. Let me start from there.
Yeah.
The bank is now compelled to raise its capital adequacy standards in keeping with the international norms.
This is the Basel.
The Basel agreement, the Basel concept.
Yeah.
The Basel has introduced certain percentages that should be maintained by the bank, and we are short of that. So I think the first reason is we must find out why the bank is short of that. Now, this Basel thing is not a sudden imposition of a condition for a bank to, making it difficult for the bank to adjust. This came to light in 2013, and the Basel gave ample and adequate time for the banks to adjust. In 2015 December, and they extended it because the banks did not do it further.
Yeah.
But the People's Bank, many other banks, had the same difficulty, but they had their own way of raising the capitals, and then they came to the standard required. But in the case of People's Bank, during the last 5 years, its operations have been so questionable and beyond the normal banking practices, that the lending has caused a serious situation with regard to the recovery of the loans that have been lent.
So this is where we see that some loans have been made or facilities made available for various people, and they can't. They're having difficulty in collecting or repayments, and that such, in essence, bad loans are not properly reflected in the non-performing loan part of the bank's books.
Yes. Now, even the percentage that is reflected in the non-performing section is so great that it has already caused the consequences to the formula.
Do you know approximately what percentage is?
Now, you see, the bank has to maintain a capital adequacy ratio of 11% minimum.
11% of their assets.
No, it is, the formula is little different.
Bit more complicated.
It's a bit of a complicated thing.
Right,
it says tier 1 capital, tier 2 capital, then divided by the risk-weighted assets. Now, this is what is important to us.
Right.
In local, in more easy terms for people to understand.
Yes, in common parlance.
Common parlance, risk-weighted assets means those assets that we are treating, the loans that we treat as assets, cannot be treated as to the same value because of the risk that it carries with regard to the recovery. When a loan is transferred into non-performing section,
Yeah.
it is not a normal asset.
Right.
It carries a certain weight,
Yeah.
which gives some bad quality to the loan asset. So what has happened to the People's Bank is, due to the bad lending, because due to the big volume of loans turning into past non-performing section, the risk-weighted assets have gone up,
Yeah.
reducing thereby the capital adequacy ratio.
I see.
So now this is the root cause. We must understand the root cause. It is definitely one is due to unscrupulous borrowing by the government.
Right. State
Government-
borrowings
The state keeps
by state-owned enterprises
state keeps on borrowing. Now,
and not paying back.
recently, I mean, we heard that the Central Expressway,
Yeah.
now Central Expressway, first part is not done, second part is not done, not even the contracts are even not given, awarded. But the minister in charge is raising a facility from a state bank to do the middle part. What do you achieve by that? I mean, these are the types of decisions that the ministers of this government are taking and causing hardships to the public, causing damages to the institutions,
Yeah.
causing severe financial problems to the institutions. Now, this is just one example. The state has borrowed so much of money.
Yeah.
If that money, according to the central bank guidelines and the regulations, more than 90% of these amounts that are outstanding should be transferred to non-performing, because they are not served properly as proper loans. They remain in the books by virtue of a letter of comfort given by the government, that is the minister. The minister appoints the board, minister issues a letter of comfort, and based on that letter of comfort, the bank keeps on lending. And the recovery part is a secondary matter.
But that can impact seriously the bank's performance.
This is what has really happened. Over and above, the bank has been going on a spree, lending to the private sector in a very unscrupulous manner. If you want me to,
Is that because it's riskier than average?
Definitely riskier, and also there is a certain amount of dishonesty behind that, you know. I should say, I don't use the word corruption.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how they have been influenced to lend like that. You know, in lending, there are various factors that a bank takes into account. Risk assessments is to be done in different ways. The continuity of the facility, the usage of the facility, the ability of the bank to monitor the facility that is granted, all those are factors that are given due weightage and consideration in granting a facility, especially the large facilities oriented for project-oriented facilities. But there are instances where, because someone is a director, because someone is a director of affiliated or the subsidiary company belonging to the bank, they are entitled to borrow. And most of those
When you say they're entitled, it's not really an entitlement, it's like a sort of unwritten entitlement.
I'm sorry, it's not the right word.
Yes.
It's not the entitlement.
Yeah.
They misuse the position.
Right.
To qualify to become eligible for them to borrow,
Yeah.
which that avenue is not open to others. Right?
And even if it's open to others, it apparently is only used rather partially, in the sense that if we cast our minds back to the bond scam, we had one particularly primary dealer who borrowed money from the central bank and then lent it back to the central bank at a much higher rate. Carry on.
In the present context,
Yeah.
you may wonder, to hear, which is very strange,
Yeah.
that same party
Yeah.
is a big defaulted customer
Yes.
of the bank.
An associated company of the same owners.
Same owners
Yeah.
has gone into non-performing to the region of billions, a couple of billions. And during the period when the entire episode of the central bank came to light and their accounts were subject to controls and limitations, and they were virtually stopped by the central bank. I mean, those people have enjoyed facilities running up to billions, and they have now been transferred to past due, non-performing.
Non-performing.
Non-performing. So this is the situation. Now this situation has led the bank to raise capital. Now this is not the first time for us that the People's Bank fell short of capital. In 1993, you know, the then Minister of Finance made a public announcement saying that the bank is bankrupt.
Indeed.
He said it is insolvent, it cannot keep up to his promises to the customers, therefore it is insolvent, therefore it has to be recapitalized by selling shares.
But no, Mr. Spallet, what tell the public, please, indeed tell me, what happens when the intervention or the permission of the Monetary Board of Sri Lanka is removed from this business of issuing debentures? When that's removed and the the Treasury guarantee is also removed and the bank issues debentures, why should the removal of those two things, the permission of the Monetary Board on the one side and the removal of the state guarantee, some would argue, well, the bank is then truly independent. Is that true? What's the impact of removing these things?
For us, it is very obvious. It is with this so-called independence that the bank was operating all these years has fallen into this difficulty. 5 times during the last 15 to 20 years, the bank has been capitalized. The last was by Mr. Honorable Kabir Hashim, who made a public announcement, said that we are going to recapitalize the bank by giving a grant of 5 billion from the state funds. Now, having done all that, the bank is back to square one, needing to raise the capital from outside sources, because the government is not in a position to continue recapitalizing the bank.
But why is this continuously? Is the bank doing so well that it needs to be capitalized more and more, or is the opposite true, that the bank is continuously making a series of poor and very risky judgments, and the non-performing portfolio of the bank is rising and rising?
For us, we don't need to write scripts about the performance of a bank, whether they are to see whether they are doing good or bad.
Yeah.
The very formula that is devised by the Basel Concord, you know, that itself shows that if you are falling short according to that formula, that shows that your performance is not good, not in keeping with the norms of a bank.
But other banks are making huge profits.
Even People's Bank, by way of making profits, yes, you know, they show profits. Now,
but are they real?
This is the problem now. If you treat the unrecoverable loans in the proper sense, and you separate them, then your profit folio also to a great extent will reflect otherwise. So
is it also so that if you do apply the rules of moving loans to non-performing within and keeping strictly to the guidelines set for you by the central bank,
yes,
then it would transpire that the bank is actually making very risky judgments, perhaps politically influenced.
It's not perhaps, it is.
It is.
It is. I told you, 40% of the lending of the bank today, the bank is surviving because of the lending to the state sector. CEB, Petroleum Corporation, Water Board, CWV, these are the prime customers of the People's Bank. In other words, bank is lending more, a higher percentage of their portfolio goes into the state lending. So basically the bank has lost its purpose, the development purpose, assisting the rural society, assisting the cooperative movement, assisting the agricultural development. They have moved away from those objectives. But at the same time, they keep on lending under the political influence to various government institutions, which no other, Lanka. how many billions you think that the two state banks have lent them to this breaking down institute? Huh?
What kind of figure are we talking about?
About 60 billion, both state banks counted. About 60 billion. And you know, the strange thing is, Bank of Ceylon has done their need. Bank of Ceylon has transferred them to the non-performing section, and they show in the books that those are non-performing loans, whereas People's Bank has not. People's Bank still keeps them in the current section, and if that amount is transferred as non-performing, which they should have done according to the regulations given by the central bank and according to the performance of the institute, the lender, the person to the institute to which it is lent, you know, it should have been long ago transferred to past non-performance. But they still continue to be in the current section. If they are transferred, the current non-performing figure, which itself has caused a serious damage or effect in the capital adequacy.
Yes, it's eaten into the capital.
Will worsen the situation.
Right.
Will worsen the now, therefore, the government says we cannot capitalize it anymore. Now they are finding ways and means of helping the bank to raise the capital by way of raising debentures. Now, one purpose of this amendment, there are two things. One is, when the bank was formed in 1961, the authorized capital of the bank was 6 million rupees. I mean, you can imagine 1961.
6M.
Yes,
right.
6 billion, 6 million. M.
Yeah.
You know, at that time, that was a big amount of money.
Yes, but it's not kept up with the times.
No, and it was never changed. So they are trying to raise the authorized capital of the bank to 50 billion by converting it to 1 billion shares of 50 rupees each. I mean, well, okay, it's not a bad exercise, because in the books, because banks' assets have gone up to trillions, and the bank's assets own capital base is only 6 million, it's absurd.
It's just a bit of a mismatch there.
Completely. So therefore, it is justified. You know, you break. Nobody raises a question about this amendment thing, about they're trying to raise the authorized capital.
Right, but
that's okay. But the second part is the issue of debentures. For us, already the People's Bank, according to the enactment in the existing act, they are authorized to issue debentures. As you rightly mentioned at the beginning, they are authorized to issue debentures under 3 conditions, subject to 3 conditions.
They are, one
is the government should guarantee the debentures.
And 2?
2, the minister must approve and the ministry must get involved.
Right, so the minister and the ministry.
Yes.
Right.
Third one, the central bank through the monetary board should give the prior approval for the bank to issue debentures.
So 3 things very valuable.
Now, this amendment seeks to take away all those 3 precautions that were incorporated in the enactment and which is already there. Now, this causes a bit alarming situation. Why are we, okay, say the government guarantee, you remove the government guarantee, and if the investors who are willing to buy the debentures or invest in debentures, if they are willing to do it without a government guarantee, that's a matter for them. So let them do that. So and the government, you know, they are saddled with so much of loans. I think they'll have to pass another appropriation bill if they want to recapitalize the bank by giving 50 billion to the bank. I think this government has come to the brim of their appropriation balances. So they can't even by way of an indirect liability provide capital adequacy to the People's Bank. Understood. So therefore, the bank should be permitted to raise its own capital. Right. Then the only way is issue debentures. Now, why do you want to take the central bank's control out of it? Why do you want to take the ministry involvement? Ministers is a different matter.
The ministry.
The minister appoints the board. I mean, board and the minister are not 2 different institutions, no? Minister appoints the board and the board acts according to the minister, what the minister directs. You know what a minister did in the bank some time ago, no? During the bond scam?
Of course, he insisted on the established system. The Auditor General said that was the system that was the best. It was the least cost way of raising funds to the state, and the minister insisted that the system be changed.
That is one instance.
Yeah.
Another instance.
Yeah.
In 2016, March the second bond issue.
Yeah.
Then Finance Minister Ravi Karunanayake convened the executives of all three banks, state banks.
And told them not to make sure that they don't bid or to bid low because the interest rates he felt were too high.
Exactly. Now, in a situation where the ministers are resorting to such levels, you know, to use their influence and the authority on the banks to do what they want.
But was the then minister wrong in trying to drive the rates down?
I mean, the result was obvious. He was trying to do that, but did it happen in the central bank level? It went the other way, no?
Yes, because they took the central bank, of course, at the time, it wasn't listed under the Minister of Finance.
They did something else.
Yes.
And then who benefited? Instead of the banks, the state banks benefiting in that transaction, it was a third party. It was the third party that benefited billions. So therefore, what I am saying, the point that I am trying to drive is the ministers deciding on policy matters in the state banks is not a very sacrosanct thing that we should say, oh my God, the minister is there, therefore everything will be done in accordance with the rules. That's not so. But when the ministries get involved with the provisions, the appropriate provisions which are laid down in the acts.
Yeah.
Now, for example, the acts exactly what is today lays down the type of bonds, the period of the type of debenture, the period of debenture, the rate of interest, all that is given in the act.
Right.
So that is for what? For the ministry that gives the directive or the approval to abide by. By doing this, what are they doing? They give the entire authority and the right for the ministry appointed board to take a decision, take a call, and then issue debentures in the way that they want. Whereas what we fear is the management of the bank which has failed so far to maintain adequate capital adequacy standards with all the backing from the government several times being recapitalized. When they are given a license freely to issue debentures and raise money at their whims and fancy in the way they want, without the interference of the central bank, monetary board, without the interference of the ministry, without those conditions that have been laid down in the overlooking or bypassing those regulations in the act, you can imagine they are creating a bottomless well. They are creating a bottomless well for this type of operations to continue. In the light of what has happened, we do not want to believe that they are going to utilize this money that is coming by way of debentures as well, for putting the bank in right footing.
Rusipal Thenakul, thank you ever so much for being on Newsline Prime and explaining the serious import of the move to amend the People's Bank Act. And we wish you well in your highlighting process and educating the public on what is actually happening. You're doing a great service by the nation, and I'm sure that we are all very grateful. It's not exactly a very popular or easy to understand matter, but certainly, like you did on other matters before, we wish you very well in your quest, and I do hope that the public won't be hard done by.
Yeah, I'm heartened by the fact that people like Honorable Dinesh Gunawardena and some other seniors in the opposition have sort of taken the responsibility and the task upon themselves to discuss this matter, debate this matter to a conclusion in the parliament as well.
Wonderful. Have you ever thought of running for parliament? Because you can then make a pretty good voice inside there. But if you do, let us know. So we'll move to that area so we can vote for you.
Thank you very much.
Rusri Parathilakul, thank you very much. And on a day when Sajid Premadasa had a grand and warm welcome in Kurunagala, which you can follow on the news in about half an hour's time on TV1 at 9 o'clock. This is us saying to you, have a very good evening, enjoy the rest of the evening, and of course, God bless you.
News First, Newsline Prime with Araz Shaukat Ali.